It's June 11th, 2020. This is Roqe. You can definitely deem our diaspora diverse, and it deserves displaying the definitive delineations of our distinctiveness. You got me? Khob hamin. You see, there are people of Iranian descent of all types and strains and sizes and extractions and ethnicities and hyphenated identification. But what about a half and half situation? In fact, what about a guy born in Reno who might tell you he's the most famous half Persian comedian in the world? The very funny Kyan joins us today, as does classical pianist extraordinaire Layla Ramezan. This is Conversations from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. This is Roqe. Welcome to episode number 17 of Roqe. Hope you are all keeping it together out there. It is Thursday, and thus our big Thursday show. The whole team is here, the whole Roqe on air team. I guess we're sort of on air. چطوری Kyan جان خوبی؟
مرسی خوب هستم. حال شما خوبه؟ Don't laugh. I'm doing my best. Tavallud Mubarak, by the way.
Oh, merci.
Happy belated.
Oh, Tavallud.
Together now.
Thank you. Well, you're a couple of days late, but I
2 days.
appreciate it. Yes. You are avec chapeau today.
Oui. You know what I discovered in quarantine? I discovered the joys.
The joys of a hat?
The joys of a hat, yes.
Okay.
I save so much time. I don't need to spend all that time putting on makeup, and
I see. So if you're wearing the baseball cap, that means no makeup.
Exactly. It's great.
What does the hat have to do with makeup?
It just kind of hides the face, so I don't need to.
Kyan, I hate to break it to you, but we can still see your face.
You can see the bottom half.
You don't need makeup.
The top half is what matters.
You are
I know,
excellent with or without makeup.
Oh,
and
so
that's,
sweet.
By the way, the voice of Captain Reza. How are you, Captain Reza?
Very well.
Also behatted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Today,
what is it,
for
hat day?
Reasons.
Today is Chapeau Day.
It's Chapeau Day.
He's wearing it for his bad hair day. I'm wearing
That's
it for
true.
my bad face day.
چی میگیم در فارسی for baseball cap?
I think it's
Kola
all
cap.
cola.
چی؟
Kola cap.
Kola cap? Oh,
I'm making stuff up.
come on, really? Is that what?
Kola
I don't
cap,
think
yeah.
so, no.
That
من
sounds
فکر
strange.
میکنم میگیم که baseball cap. Kola cap? So just to explain to people who don't speak Farsi. So the Farsi word for baseball cap is hat cap. It's great. That's Groovy Shaya. Hi Shaya.
Hi.
So you're back to speaking with your mouth instead of your fingers. I thought you were going to have the keyboard out from now on.
No, not today. It's very busy here, actually. And,
Yes.
And we are freezing here.
Yeah,
Right?
well, there is air
That's why I'm
conditioning
wearing
in our
a
studio.
sweater.
Yeah. Well, I like it. It keeps everybody on the toes. So your excuse for not playing the keyboard is that Reza is sitting there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even though you could put the keyboard in between. It's really a terrible excuse.
It
Oh,
is,
he
I
can hold
agree.
it for me. I can play.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah. Just blame Captain Reza for everything.
Next time, Groovy Shaya, please have the keyboard ready as well as your Kola cap. Quite the show we have later on this episode. Layla Ramezan, who is a classical piano player extraordinaire. She's living in Switzerland. She has been involved in a project, Kyan, to over the course of four albums to excavate, to discover 100 years of Iranian piano music.
Wow.
So Iranian piano composers are different from Western piano composers, right, Shaya?
Yes, yes, and also I remember that the reason that I don't have my keyboard is because of Layla. No, really, because she's
Out of respect for her, because
she's
she's
cool,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's amazing.
No,
and-
she is one of the best pianists in the world, and I very much look forward to speaking to her. And before her, of course, Kayvon is joining us in a few moments, who you're a fan of, right?
Honestly, he's such a joy to listen to, and he might actually be my newest favorite comedian.
Your newest? You just recently discovered him?
I've been following him on Instagram for a while. It's only recently that I've kind of been exposed to more of his, more of what he really does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he's cute too. Let's be honest here.
Okay, well, maybe I'll let's get to the introduction of Kayvon. Thank you, Kyan. We'll see you after Kayvon. Kayvon, Kyan, Jian, Reza. You see,
Whole happy family.
Reza and Reza. Okay. Stand-up comedy requires enormously unique talents and a keen sense of observation. And it's a vulnerable position to put oneself in the beginnings, standing against a brick wall in an uncomfortably overlit spotlight, giving of yourself while the crowd judges you. So it's impressive when a guy who says he wondered where he fit in as a young person can become successful in such a demanding profession. My first guest today is an internationally recognized stand-up comedian, actor, and TV show host. His comedy has a versatile, relatable style. He engages his audience with high-energy performances and funny stories about a variety of mainstream topics. And he tailors his jokes to audiences of all ages and likes to poke fun at himself along the way, and has a massive online following to show for it. Kayvon Moezi was born in Reno, Nevada, and is the self-described most famous half-Persian comedian in the world. Millions have seen Kayvon's appearances on MTV's Disaster Date, Last Comic Standing, Netflix, and his popular TEDx talk on growing up half Persian, to name a few. He has also appeared in numerous movies, tours around the world, and last year, Kayvon released his first book called Once You Go Persian, a survivor guide from a half. Right now, Kayvon Moezi joins me from Las Vegas today. Hello, sir.
Oh, what a great intro. I can't follow that, so we should just end it right now.
It'll be short, but very, but promotional.
Exactly. That's all you need to know, folks. Anything I say from here will just lose fans at this point. So, but
Just
thank you for having me.
Go to the YouTube videos. Just go to just go straight to the.
Go directly there. That's right.
Right. Listen, first and foremost, I mean, these are bizarre and sad days, I would say, for the United States, if not the world. What's it like for you to be in Vegas right now, in between the pandemic and the protests? I don't know if they're affecting Vegas as much, but how are you feeling?
Well, you're right. It's a very weird time. And as you were reading all those great things, I remember that's when we were allowed to do stand-up comedy shows. And about, mid-March, I started getting calls one by one. Your Nowruz event in Houston is not going to happen. The Nowruz party at Carnegie Mellon University. And they just one by one fell like dominoes in like a week's time. And so that's when you realize it's kind of like, you realize how special comedy was, because you start getting in the rut and like, oh, I gotta fly to Pennsylvania, oh geez, gotta get a rental car. The next time I get a gig, I'm gonna be so happy to get an Avis rental car and pull up and beep beep, and here I am. So this has been a good wake up call.
I mean, I know the world of music, and I feel for a lot of musicians. We've had some on this show in the last few weeks, Hamed, Nick Pay, Ali Azimi, talking about how and classical musicians talking about they don't know what the path forward is when they can't play concerts. I was tending to think it's easier for comedians, at least at the high level. If you're Seinfeld, you release your next Netflix special. It doesn't matter whether there's COVID or not. You're piling in the dough, right?
Yes.
At your level, I would imagine touring is still an important part of this, right?
Yes, the live tour is really everything, because if people like you, they come up after the show, they want to get your book, please sign the t-shirt, and you make friends with people all over the world. And so I miss visiting them. I miss going out to the restaurant after. I do a joke where you do a show, and Persians always want to take you to the Persian restaurant in their town after.
Right.
And after about the 10th city, you go, why don't we do Vietnamese? They're like, or there's Persian. I go, right, but we could go to Thai food. There's a Persian place next to the Thai food. You have to try that one. And so it just keeps going. And
Right,
but now I
right.
miss all that. I want kebab. I want it all, please.
Well, you certainly know your Persian references. Tell me what being a hafi means to you.
Well, being half Persian, what I tell women is the perfect amount of Persian. If you're not sure if you like Iranian men, start with me, then you work your way to a full. That's what I always tell people. But no, my dad is from Iran, my mom, Iowa. And these two met, around college in Reno, Nevada. And I was more in touch with the American side until the age of 22 years old. I get to Los Angeles, and people start booking me for their Persian backyard party or their Persian Jewish bar mitzvah, and I realize I better start looking at my family a lot closer and finding if there's any material there to dig. And little did I know, the more I dug, I was like, I never thought this was funny. My dad's name is Iraj, and he has a brother named Turaj. But you know what? That is funny. If they would have had more boys, 3 Raj, 4 Raj, 5 Raj, every Raj.
Right.
And as I'm doing these jokes, it's not just Iranians. I have Indians coming up going, I really like that joke about Iraj and Turaj. That hit home for me. And I'm like, why? You're not even Persian. He goes, but my name is Raj.
Right.
So I find that talking about having a Persian dad is a jumping off point where other people can say, that reminds me of my Cuban uncle. Now let's talk. And it's a great olive branch to bring people to you and get them to relate.
Well, 2 steps back, and seriously, when you talk about you were more in touch with your American side, and I mean, part of that would be obvious because you're growing up in the States, so why wouldn't you be? But it's interesting because in your case, you are literally half Iranian, half American, and that's the way many of us feel in the diaspora. Like we don't fit in on either continent, half Eastern and half Western. Were you suppressing your Persian side, or did you just not know about it?
I just didn't really know about it. When I was in first grade, our teacher told us that she could tell by our last names. It was kind of a lesson in culture. You can normally tell by someone's last name where their family might have originated from. So she said, like, Mr. Garcia, you are probably Latino, and Wang, that's either Chinese or Korean of some sort.
This
and
sounds
Moezi,
terrible.
You're Italian.
This wouldn't pass the 2020 test, I don't think, at this point.
No.
Right.
Well, she was just trying to teach us that with a little last name, you can have an idea made.
Right.
She wasn't
Okay.
saying,
All right.
I know your dad's a Mexican.
Okay.
She wasn't like that. She's a gentle, beautiful first grade teacher. And she said, Moezi, you're most likely Italian. I go, woo, no wonder I like spaghetti so much. So I was Italian. I really thought I was Italian until my mom was like, what do you, and it was like 5th grade when I'm like, so we're part Italian? And she's like, no, who told you that? And I'm like, hey, my first grade teacher. And that was like, a very important grade. What you learn in first grade sticks with you.
Right.
So I had to undo my Italian and jump onto a new ship and start learning about Iranian stuff. It was very confusing for me.
Well, I want to come back to how you started to come to terms with the Iranianness you didn't know about. But first of all, tell me what the cultural thermostat is and how you use it. Oh,
yeah. Well, I joke that sometimes it's better to be Persian and sometimes regular white. That's what I call it. I always have Persians who go, what is regular white? We are white. I go, yeah, you're white. My mom is white. So that's the difference.
Right.
If there's a W or V there. But and then in my comedy, I just make jokes. When would you rather be white? When would you rather be Persian? I'm like, well, when you're negotiating for a car, turn the Persian up, get a good deal on the BMW. But when you get to the airport, turn the Persian off. Right. You don't want to be Middle Eastern at that moment. You can, just have fun with it.
Well, this is why I wanted to ask you about that, because I know it's very funny in your act and in your book, but I'm sure that many people would look at you and say, this guy could pass as a handsome white dude. Why out yourself as Iranian and deal with the issues that might come from that? I mean, despite any pride we might take in it. Did you feel at some point like you didn't fit in? I mean, tell me about that disconnect that we can feel between what we portray outwardly and what we are really feeling.
Well, when I started stand-up comedy, it was all about, well, regular white guys were just killing it. And I'm doing jokes about being Persian, half Persian. And they're like, that is not, people tried to guide me like, hey, get some mainstream jokes. There's no market for this. What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just writing about my life. Well, halfway through, about 2009, 10, everything switched where it's like, no more regular white guys. What's your diversity? What's your ethnicity? What? And so I started doing that, and they're going, nah, you're not really that Persian. There's way more Persians and Muslims, and you're not brown, buddy. So I've always been on the outside of what's supposedly allowed, and I don't let it deter me. I just do the best jokes I can and post them on YouTube. And if you find me and you love them, that's fine. I don't care about ethnicity that much. I don't put that much weight into it. I just think if you find it really fun and interesting to hear some funny stories about my aunt or my uncle or my dad's life or mine, I think that's a great way to just reach people.
Tell me about how you came to comedy. You talk about comedians always being your heroes from a young age. Why were comedians your heroes?
I joke that I wanted to be in a boy band, but I didn't have 3 other friends. So I was stuck with the microphone and I couldn't sing, so I had to do something. But the reality is, I loved, my mom would make us read all the time. During summertime, most kids get to play and do this. She would take us to the library and sign us up for the book club. And you had to read 2 books a week to get little stars. And at the end, you got a pizza party or something. And I hated that growing up. But now I look back and go, that was awesome. And I would pick books that were funny because it was already hard enough to spend your summer inside reading. But I'd get certain magazines and different books, and I read about Johnny Carson, and I really loved him. And I would see a lot of great, clever comedians. There was a show called Comic Relief, where 20 comedians would come on TV and do their best 5 minutes to raise money for the homeless. That's why it's called Comic Relief. So these are like funny guys, everyone's laughing, and they're doing something for charity. I'm like, how do I get this job?
Right.
This is what I want to do. And of course, there's no job fair for comedian. You just have to show up to dingy bars and keep getting on stage, and people throwing popcorn at you, and maybe the football game's on over your head, and they're like, shut up, I'm trying to watch. But as you work through that, the clubs get nicer, the venues get bigger, the crowds are more into you, and you need to go through that to get to a level where you earned a big crowd on a Friday night.
So you're this kid who is enamored of comedy. You're born and you're living in Reno, Nevada, not exactly a mecca of Fess June familiar denizens at the time, I would imagine. And your dad marries this blonde white woman from Iowa. I can't tell what's real and not in your comedy. Did he wear a cowboy hat? Was he really doing this kind of Western American guy thing?
Yeah, a lot of people ask about my comedy, and the reality is I go based on truth because it's too hard to invent all this stuff.
Right.
But the truth is funnier than fiction. My dad bought a pickup truck that looked like something you would see in the middle of Nebraska with a gun rack. He wore a cowboy hat when he'd go around. He loved having a buck knife on his hip, and he just looked like a darker redneck, Persian redneck of some sort. So,
and was he trying to fit in? Is that what was that about?
Well, I think when he moved to America in the 70s and 80s, you wanted to be a part of the American dream and what you saw in movies. And he watched Westerns in Iran and thought, I'm going to be Clint Eastwood when I get there, or Steve McQueen. And then now it's different than what I'm used to. Now it's when you move to that country, teach them about who you are, and don't you dare learn their culture. Keep your own. Not for everyone. I'm just seeing a lot of that. And it's kind of different than what I was used to. So I'd say maybe there's a happy medium in there somewhere.
There's something else too, man, which is I'm older than you. As somebody who was a kid in the 80s, after the revolution happened and the hostage crisis, it was really hard to be an Iranian in the West. And so your dad was probably protecting the family on some level, or just kind of going, I don't want to have to deal with that,
That's true as well.
You do talk about how your dad was a prototypical Persian dad in that he would not let on if he didn't know something. In fact, he knows everything, right? The dad,
a wealth of wisdom. That's right. Even if he doesn't know what he's talking about.
But he couldn't hide his Persian side from you. One of my favorite parts of your book is you talk about your dad you're enamored of wrestling, and you go to this the WWF, it was called at the time. What do you call it? I guess a a show,
wrestling match.
Yeah, a wrestling
big old
match
wrestling
in Reno at this arena, and your dad ends up cheering for the Iron Sheik in the arena of wrestling fans who are booing him.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
My
that
dad
experience.
loved the Iron Sheik because in Iran, Iron Sheik was an actual wrestling star, and he'd known about him. And then Iron Sheik, Khosrow Vaziri, if I'm not mistaken, was his real name, but Iron Sheik, and he moved to help train Olympians in America. So my dad was like a few years behind that, going, this is one of our own that's made it. And then when he became the lead bad guy for WWF wrestling, my dad's like, he's still an Iranian treasure. I'm cheering for him. Wow. So it was just funny because the average wrestling fan has been trained that that's the bad guy, and nobody in the whole area was excited to see the Iron Sheik except for my father. He's like, yeah, he's here. Woo.
It's a great story. So you finally decide, or you decide, and correctly, as if we look back from this standpoint now, that you want to become a comedian. You talk about the fact that when you finally come to this decision, it's exactly the week your brother gets accepted into USC dental school, and you also did the LSAT and got accepted into law school right around when you decided to go to comedy. So you could have really satisfied the Persian side of you by doing that. But how did your choice of comedy go down with your parents at that point?
That was really hard. And actually now with coronavirus and being locked down, my dad reminded me that maybe it's not too late and I should have gone to law school. I go, I don't need this right now. Stop. But yeah, that was hard because technically a foreign immigrant father would have had a law student and a dental student at the same time. That is just, but I've kept him alive to give him something to worry about. This comedy path, which is so weird and it's hard to explain the job. And hey dad, I got hired by Google Corporate. I'm doing a 20-minute show for them next Wednesday. Yeah. Like to him, that's nothing. It's like, oh man.
But he must appreciate that you're doing well now, right? Like I'm sure does he come to your gigs and stuff?
Well, I try not to have family there too much because a lot of it is me acting like I'm so cool on stage, and you don't want anyone that knew you before you were a comedian going, this guy, he got dumped by his first 3 girlfriends, so he's not some, So, but yeah, he comes about once a year to a show, and my dad used to work at the casinos in Las Vegas, and people would come up to gamble, and if he saw they were Iranian or some sort of speaking Persian for some reason, he would go, hey, have you heard of my son? And he would hand them a business card. And 10 years later, by the end of his career, he'd be like, have you heard of my son? He's a comedian. And then people would start saying my name to him before he even got to the business card. So that's how he knew I was somehow getting a little more internationally recognized.
Right. You've never learned to speak Farsi. Do you, I mean, I know you know some words, but do you think you're funnier because you don't speak Farsi to Iranians?
Oh, it's hard. I get lectured at every show.
I'm sure.
That I need to learn more Farsi, and how dare you. Some people are joking and some are very angry. And it was funny. One Iranian woman said, if you were to date Persian woman, this is what you need to do. You will learn Farsi. So I go, come on, that's not how you learn a language. Yes, you will learn Farsi. Well, I did date a Persian girl for 2 years, and I learned one word. Nakon. So don't talk. No, thank you. Maybe next time. So I'm an expert at Nakon.
Right. And your dad helped you with some Farsi words, like the name of your dog is.
Yeah. The name of my dog growing up was Sag. And we had a bird named Abi because the bird was blue, and our other bird was Zard. And that was how he was going to do it. And I said, well, unless you're building an ark, we're not going to get through enough words to make this functional.
Oh, when you talk about some people getting mad at you for not, I mean, did they really get mad at you for not speaking Farsi, or are you kidding?
Yes, I've been cornered. See, the problem with being a comedian is if you do meet and greets after the show, you meet everybody.
Right.
And 99% of people are amazing and nice, and oh my gosh, they give you something, but you don't remember that. You remember the 4 or 5 times in your life that, and it's more funny to remember those anyways. And the lady cornered me and goes, this was our Nowruz event, and you spoke English the whole time.
Right.
I go, right, but I was only on stage for 20 minutes, and you had 3 hours of Persian flute and Persian tambourine and Persian food, and you have made disrespect of our whole event. And the girl's going, Mom, I liked it. No, I want to tell him. And she was going off like she had thought of this and was ready to unload on me just for. And in my comedy, I go, I apologize for not speaking Farsi. My dad never taught me. Please email him. And I make jokes like that, but that was not enough for her. She needed to let me know.
See, I was going to ask you from another standpoint about how Iranians might, in terms of the actual comedy itself, like in your act, in your book, there isn't a lot that's sacred, as it should be. I mean, for a comedian, and you're, for example, you're pretty hard on what you call Persian princesses, you know, and although that's all very funny, have you heard from Iranians who are somehow offended by this? I mean, besides requisite trolls, do you ever have someone saying, "How dare you? You're not even 100% Persian. You shouldn't be, you know, you should celebrate our positive side," or something?
Yes, any criticism you can think of, I've heard it twice at least. Iranians don't really like to poke fun at themselves. A lot of times they have different sensibility levels, and especially because they look at me. Let's say an Iranian comes to my show halfway through and sits down, then they hear me start going on about Persians. They haven't got the beginning where I say, "Hey, my dad's this, my mom's that."
Right,
So they're
right,
jumping in the middle of a movie,
right.
and they've been trained like that guy with blue eyes must be racist. He just made two jokes in a row about Iranians, and then he talked about Persian princesses. I'll go up and stop him so that this doesn't happen again. And that's the problem with people getting offended too quickly. And I try to bring that up often in my show.
How do you deal with it when you get a nasty comment on social media or somebody heckling? How do you deal?
Well,
Go
because
ahead.
I'm American, I typically take the Trump path because we get criticized so many times that I could say thank you for your advice and I will work on that. But I'm more like, if you don't like that joke, you wait 2 minutes. There will be another one that's about a totally different topic.
Right.
And if they come back again, and then but I try to always match them whatever level they're at. I'm not proud of it. I should probably back off and just say, okay, thanks, or delete. But I do engage a little because in comedy, there's a thing called the heckler. The heckler is right when you're about to do your big punchline. The guy goes, "You suck."
Right.
And now, if you just finish your punchline, the audience isn't going to even laugh anymore. You have to address the heckler and say, you can say whatever you want. You can say, "Oh, my uncle's in the front row. He wishes I went to law school." That's a happy way to deal with a heckler. You could say, "This is the last time I bring my father to my show and sit him in the front row. Dad, the nurse is going to come take you out soon in the wheelchair," whatever. Or you can go really nasty. Because we're Persian, we don't typically go real nasty. We make it fun. You know, one woman said, "This guy is the worst comedian I've ever seen." I'm like, "You need to get out more. There's so many worse comedians than me." Just little stuff like
Sure,
that.
sure.
I don't let it go, but I don't typically get too hard on them.
See, my theory is, I'll bet when you're doing a cave-on gig, like when you're headlining some big theater and everybody's coming to see you, you can do no wrong. I mean, someone
Right.
like Maz Jobrani at this point, nobody's going to heckle Maz because he's successful. We are proud, we sort of,
Yeah.
everybody goes and thinks everything he says is funny. But even he at the Comedy Store on a Tuesday night, with 20 people, 18 of which don't know him, might not be as
Yes.
funny, right? So that's probably part of what it probably depends on the audience, I'm assuming.
Yes, that is a huge part. And the other huge part is when you're charging $70 a ticket, the audience goes, "We're going to laugh no matter what." They are ready to do it. And at my shows, "We got a Groupon. Let's tell him he sucks." So you have to understand what level you're at. And I want to raise my ticket prices so everyone is more respectful.
When you talk about being the blue-eyed guy, you've done a bunch of touring and you've toured with Moz, and I know you went, for example, to Dubai, and you played a big sold-out theater there. Did they react to you differently because you're white-looking than the reaction you might get in Canada or the States?
They were pretty cool there. The thing with Dubai was you have to send your jokes to the magistrate before you arrive, and then they kind of criticize whether the jokes are good or not before you get there. I've never had an experience like that where they go, "Please send us your script." I'm like, "Hey, comedians don't have a script. We have a bottle of beer in one hand, and we're teasing the crowd with the mic in the other." So I had to pencil out what I was probably going to do and send it, and they said, "Well, it hasn't broken any of our laws." these are the jokes? I go, yeah. Well, we're not sure how funny this is, but good luck to you. I was like, thanks a lot, man. But yeah, they were very cool. We did 2 shows out there.
You know, you mentioned Nowruz earlier, and the lady yelling at you for not speaking Farsi. You've talked a lot about Nowruz in your act. You did a Nowruz tour, you did a Nowruz film, you discuss it in your book. The amazing part for me is that this is you didn't even know that this was the most important date on the Persian calendar when you were growing up. I mean, your parents did name you Kayvon. Your dad clearly could not hide his Iranianness at home. Why do you think he didn't tell you about Nowruz?
That was not a holiday we ever talked about. I know when I went to my aunt's house every few months or years, she'd have some weird dish on the middle, but it wasn't a big layout like a table where I'm like, what is all this? It was a small little like do-it-yourself Nowruz kit, little grass, little coins, little garlic. I'm like, yeah, she probably just left this stuff out from cooking. So when I got to LA, someone hired me for a big Nowruz event. I go, well, I don't know what that is, but is it paying? I'll be there. And they had to explain to me what was this table about 3 times, and each Persian had a little bit of a different answer, what belonged on there and what didn't. And I said, this is so confusing that I'm actually interested. And instead of just learning something, I'm like, why don't I bring a cameraman, and I'll let the viewer learn this holiday with me. There's no better way to share it than watching a kid go through the journey at the same time. And that became an award-winning documentary called Nowruz,
Yes.
Lost and Found.
Kayvon, how often do you get asked to make Zeresh Polo?
Oh, that is a lot, because one of my most famous jokes is how I made Zeresh Polo for a TV show and I burned it and I messed up. But by the end, I got it perfectly with the tahdig that was brown and crispy rice there. And so now as a joke or even seriously, a lot of people will say, hey, girls, you say, hey, we should go out sometime. Will you make me Zeresh Polo? I go, hey, come on. This is a first. That's like, there's things a man cannot ask for on a first date.
Right.
Ladies, you should not. That's
You got to work your way up to the
cannot
Zeresh Polo. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to make you wait. We can work out a negotiation.
I mean, are you a one-trick pony, or are there other Persian dishes you can now wow people with?
One trick pony. I can make lots of different dishes, but Persian food, I leave that to the experts.
I know I can't keep you here forever. I've just got a couple more questions. You end your book with this ode to comedy and laughter, and you say you really believe it can help the world. Laughing can. Tell me about that, because I assume that's part of the reason you went into this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think comedy's underrated if done right. I'm seeing a lot of comedy now. It's called social justice comedy, or what they call woke comedy.
Right.
I think you want to stay away from that. That's not so much comedy. You notice there's a lot less laughs, but it's a lot of political points being made.
Right.
And I come from a different generation where you didn't know which way Johnny Carson voted when he got behind. Now they want to tell you out loud. You just knew Johnny Carson would make fun of, let's say, Bill Clinton, and then he would make fun of George Bush, or something like that in the same breath. And you go, wow, he just punched both in the eye. That's cool. So I try to do that a lot in my comedy, where it's balanced. I might start a joke making fun of, let's just say, like a gay guy, but then I end it where the gay guy actually made fun of who you thought was being rude in the beginning of the joke. So when people get offended too quickly, they are missing the whole scope of things.
There's one other thing that really actually quite moved me in your book. And you talk about how, because of this duality in you, the half and half, you can kind of fit in with white folk and with Iranians. So you're privy to hearing conversations with both sides. You'll be with a bunch of American guys talking about Iranians and not knowing that you're Iranian, or at one of those Persian restaurants after the gig and they're talking about Americans, and you overhear a lot. How do you think Americans or Iranians misunderstand each other the most?
Yeah, that's where it gets kind of interesting. I try to bring everyone kind of back to the middle, because it's very easy to be like, oh, all Americans are racist and they hate this. No, all Iranians are, none of this whole all. it doesn't make sense. I have a joke in the book where I say, if you ask 10 Iranians their opinion, you get 14 different answers. So they don't even agree with themselves or their own brother. You see the arguments on Facebook between two family members. So no one is, I think culture is a fun thing to joke and talk about. But if you're like, oh, that guy votes like this, I'm sure because he's black. You don't know that. And I think comedy is a cool way to uncover that we have a lot more in common than we do that divides us.
It's great to talk to you, man. We started the interview with a promotional message here, the introduction to you. It actually was just a legitimate introduction. I wasn't trying to promote you. You have done impressive stuff. But you talk about how it's not easy to tour right now. So if people want to find you, of the bevy of things that you've got going on online, where should we send people? What do you want to go ahead, promote? We got you on the show. Tell us.
Yes. All right. This is how I make my money. Get ready, folks. No, I because of all the social media platforms, we have to be part of all of them. So I'm on Instagram. You just Google or search it. You'll find my Instagram, my Facebook, my Twitter, my Telegram, my website, my Tinder account. I'm on Craigslist and eBay. I am everywhere. So find whichever one works for you. And if I want to give away 20 free tickets to the first 20 listeners that message me and mention your name, because we want to spread the love, spread the laughter, and give some freebies. But here's the catch. There are no shows right now.
I was going to say tickets to what?
Yeah. So you might have to, but what I've been doing is Zoom comedy shows.
Okay.
So if they message me and go, hey, I have a cocktail hour. I'm sick of looking at my aunt's forehead. Can you come on and just tell jokes? I've done that for like 20 people, and then 20 companies have hired me to do a Zoom or a live private show for their small staff. And I'll do that this time of year.
All right. That sounds great. We'll
yeah.
There it goes, folks. info@roqemedia.com. Send us a note and we'll get you those, the first 20, I guess, who send it. By the way, you said Telegram. Does that mean people watch you in Iran?
They do. I have a lot of fans in Iran, and they message me through the Telegram, or some of them, they have I'm not really, is it called an IPN? That lets them use a different. They have some sort of way where they're like illegally writing me. It feels very
VPN,
underground.
Right.
VPN. Thank you. And they've been doing this thing and writing me, and I'm getting messages. Sometimes I'll repost them. I block out names, and so I don't want to get anybody killed. But I go, hey, I just got a fan from Iran who messaged me, and they do the jokes, they reenact them, and I hope one day to perform there too.
Thanks so much for doing this, brother, and we hope to see you on tour sooner rather than later, post-COVID.
Yes,
stay
please.
safe and sane in the meantime, and we'll promote your social media sites, and people should go out and get this book as well. Thank you for doing this.
You as well. Have a good one, and thank you for including me, and everybody have a safe time out there, and we'll get through this year. Don't worry about it.
Thanks, buddy. Kayvan Moezi. Comedian, filmmaker, author of the book Once You Go Persian, A Survivor Guide from a Half. Kayvan joined us from Las Vegas today. Kayvan Moezi. Kyan is walking back in the studio. How about that?
You already know how I feel about Kayvan.
You like Kayvan. He was funny.
He's delightful.
He was good.
I think everybody agrees.
Well, do we all agree? I think you guys were laughing in there. I was watching while we did the interview.
Yeah, it's quite funny.
Yeah, he's charming.
You'll just say quite funny, huh, Captain Reza?
Yeah.
He doesn't think he's as cute as I do.
Right.
But you can say
I
that.
think he's cute.
Fella.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he's giving away 20 tickets for his Zoom, I guess, for a Zoom show.
Can I apply for that?
Yes. Didn't you already send in your email?
I made it very clear.
You are welcome to. info@roqemedia.com. Info@roqemedia. I think Sarah in the other room wanted to also get in on those tickets. It'll just be it's basically the Roqe. Anybody who's volunteering or working on Roqe, it's going to be watching the Kayvan.
I think most women will try to.
Well, you're really stuck on this.
I think
you really,
so, yeah.
you really think you're very attracted to him.
Not just me. Well, there's
Yes,
no women
Reza is
here.
attracted to him
I'm
too.
looking
That
at
we wants
Reza
to
like,
get
right,
out
Reza?
No, he's a
cute.
lovely man.
He is.
Yes. Okay, so info@roqemedia.com is where to get in touch with us. If you want to get tickets right away, get tickets to see Kyan on Zoom. So what is he? He allows you into the Zoom, I guess. That's the way.
You see, I'm super curious about this. Now I might get a ticket
Well,
myself.
Reza, if you email info@roqemedia.com.
Where was it again?
Write it down. It's very important.
@roqemedia.com.
That's right.
But you see, one of the appeals of stand-up comedy is the laughter, right, from the audience. And I suppose for the sake of not being heckled like through Zoom, he probably is gonna like. And here's another thing, because when you do stand-up on stage, you got a microphone that you speak to, right?
Yeah.
And you're louder than anybody else. So even if somebody shouts out at you, you barely
He
hear
can
them.
mute everybody.
But that's what I mean. And
Oh,
he
I see.
mutes
Then you won't hear them
everybody, then
laughing.
You mute the laughter, exactly.
Right,
so I
right,
don't know
right.
how that's
It's
gonna
like
go.
those shows right now, the late night. If you're in North America and you see Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon and Stephen Colbert, without the crowd,
That's right,
they're just
that's
kind of
right.
talking. Trevor Noah and you, you sort of go, oh, that's funny, but there's nobody. It is a strange.
It is true.
It's a
It
bit
is true.
awkward.
They
Bill
could put
Maher,
the
though,
old laugh track on it.
That's
maybe.
but Bill Maher does
It's
that.
even weirder.
Yeah.
Bill Maher is still like he
uses the laugh
yeah,
track.
yeah.
Groovy Shaya, did
Yes.
you enjoy the Kyan interview?
Yes, I laughed a lot, and I can imagine that I'm sitting in a room and seeing him, performing on Zoom, and I could laugh
Really,
a lot.
yeah?
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
true. That's true.
Yeah. Shaya's waiting for Layla Ramezan, let's face it. She's a piano hero. And we're going to get to her in just a few moments. Layla Ramezan will be joining us from Lausanne, Switzerland. But first, Letters with Kyan.
Okay, so last week on episode 15, we had comedian Tehran Von Qasri. He joined us from LA. He spoke very passionately about the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as his experience of growing up as a half African-American, half Iranian person in America.
Yes.
So it was a really open interview that shined a new light on the racial issues of today from a unique, really, truly unique perspective of someone being both African-American and Iranian. So a lot of people wrote to us about that interview.
It was obviously very timely, and
Yeah.
it has become one of our most popular episodes
For sure.
already, even though back to the beginning of the show.
Definitely.
And I guess that's partly because of its currency and partly because people love Tehran, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, he shines a new light on that movement from an Iranian perspective. So that's interesting. It kind of gauges us. So we had Sheila Iranian Khalaj on Facebook. She wrote, "So glad you interviewed Tehran. I follow him on Twitter, and he is great at educating people on the current situation."
Thank you. Who was that?
That was Sheila Iranian Khalaj.
Thank you, Sheila.
As well, we had Faye Arjmand on Facebook. She wrote, "Absolutely agree with him." We have Bahare Panahi.
She agreed with
Tehran.
Tehran.
Yeah.
How do you know?
What do you mean? How
Well,
do I
if she say absolutely agree with him, maybe she means
Well, did
Shaya or me.
Oh, that's true.
I think
That's true.
the majority of that interview was kind of Tehran based, so I'd go with that.
Yeah, that's probably what you meant. Thank you, Faye.
Yeah. So as well, we had Bahare Panahi. She said, "Tehran, you are such a sweet guy. Thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed this," with several emojis.
Nice.
Yeah. Lisa Christina, she wrote, "I thoroughly enjoyed this interview. I love the philosophy and multi-dimensional aspects of Tehran and all he's got to say. Listening to your guests inspires me to connect with the multi-dimensionality of my own identity and interests. And I love the banter between you and the team. As do I, Lisa, as do I."
Wait, so
That's-
as do I was you.
That was me,
Right,
yes.
Okay. It's hard to keep track. So thank you, Lisa Christina,
Yes, Lisa Christina.
a person with two first names.
It would appear so, yes.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have Hamid just SH on YouTube.
Hamed.
Yes,
Hamed,
Hamed.
all
He wrote, Jian and team, you guys are awesome. The show is getting better and better, and I am so glad to have such a show to be able to follow and listen to every week. Your part with Kyan is hilarious and a joy to listen to at the end of each interview. Tehran was an incredible guest. I always knew of him, but never really knew him. I will certainly be following his work more closely. Let us know how we can support your show. Nice
That's
note.
really nice,
Yeah.
Ahmed. Shh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cute.
Yeah, that was lovely.
Nice note.
That is a great letter. How you can support us by, we haven't promoted the show yet. No, we haven't done any advertising. We haven't done, but it would be great if you like what you're hearing. First of all, you can subscribe. You can subscribe to us on iTunes or on SoundCloud or on YouTube. You can follow us on our platform and let people know about it if you're liking it. But thank you so much for that, Hamed. What else you got?
So, as well, this week on episode 16, we had award-winning multidisciplinary artist Hamid Rahmanian joining us from New York. As well, we had acclaimed graphic novelist Bruce Bahmani joining us from San Francisco.
Bruce Bahmani, yeah.
Yeah, so they both spoke very candidly about creatively adapting the Shahnameh, also known as the Persian Book of Kings, as well as Iranian-American duality, pursuing artistic dreams, and the challenges of finding support for art and culture in the Iranian diaspora.
Yes.
Diaspora. Why can't I pronounce that word?
You pronounce it fine. Yeah, so they're two guys who are both really intent on bringing the Shahnameh to more people out there in really interesting, accessible artistic forms.
For sure.
I have to say that Hamid Rahmanian was one of my favorite, and Bruce as well, but Hamid's openness about what it's like to be an artist, a creator in the Persian community, and the lack of support for a guy in Brooklyn who's winning these awards, who's a Guggenheim fellow, but can't seem to get the support from the community was, it's not something unique. We're hearing this over and over again, but it's such an important conversation, and I was really happy that Hamid went there in the interview.
Yeah, I love the analogy he used. Iran is like a symphony, and the last 40 years is just a few notes in the symphony. He was kind of highlighting the fact that, we forget so much of what our culture, what it means to be Iranian. So I love what both of them are doing with the Shahnameh and kind of highlighting it and bringing it back to the consciousness. So,
Yes.
Yeah. So a few people wrote on that episode. We have my good old friend Amir Nickdale. No, Nickdale. I'm kidding. It's Nickdale. I learned.
Yes.
He wrote saying, making the Shahnameh just like Game of Thrones. Now that would be gangster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about the synergies between the Shahnameh and Game of Thrones, except the Game of Thrones that I'm a huge fan of. Shahnameh is probably better written, so
Imagine
not
if
probably,
they adapted
but
that.
Imagine.
That would be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Zahak, oh my God, that story gave me nightmares since the age of
Really?
5. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Really, you learned the Shahnameh at the age of 5
so my parents used to read it to us as bedtime stories, and the story of
in
Zahak.
Tennessee. Or
No, I was
Kentucky?
in
Where were
Kuwait
you?
at that time. I was in Kuwait.
Kuwait?
Yeah, my dad's business was there, so we lived there for a few years.
Wait, you're born in? I was joking, but you're born in Iowa, right?
Yeah,
So then
lived in Kuwait for a few years after that, and then
Do you speak
moved-
Arabic?
No, I refused to learn Arabic. I was like,
Why?
I am not an Arab. I'm Persian.
We are not
I was-
Arab.
Exactly.
But I don't understand. You're from a Persian family,
Yes.
and you lived in Kuwait for years, and you're just unilingual. You're just going with English.
I speak Farsi. What are you talking about? A
Yep.
little bit of French too. We can try it in Farsi if you don't believe me. But anyway, I won't.
But that's so you.
put us
But
in-
so when you were in Kuwait,
Yeah.
they taught you the Shahnameh.
Well, so both my brothers, we would kind of crawl up in bed, and I recall almost every night my dad would just sit there and read different stories from the Shahnameh. And
Wow.
yeah, really
That's
beautiful.
pretty awesome.
And the
We should
fact that it
encourage all our listeners to do that
For sure.
for the kids.
To go to
And
Kuwait.
To go to Kuwait.
First, go to Kuwait.
No, I wouldn't recommend that.
Shahnameh at night to your children in an Arab country.
Yeah. I mean, it stays with you too. Like, you guys would agree that I'm not the most Persian person on the face of the earth, but stories from the Shahnameh really stayed with me,
Yeah.
so it's impactful.
That's
Yeah.
true.
That's
Yeah.
great.
It's lovely.
I didn't. I got nothing as a kid from the Shahnameh.
No,
No,
really?
I didn't know about it.
Oh.
I didn't know anything about it until I was, later in life. I said in the interview, I didn't even read one of the stories of Shahnameh until maybe about a decade ago when
Really?
when it was during the first season of Game of Thrones. I remember because I was like, this is so Game of Thrones. I mean, I'd heard of the Shahnameh, but I really didn't. No.
The story of Rostam?
I knew the story of David Bowie.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I knew.
Moving on.
The Beatles. The Beatles were my Shahnameh.
Well, it's never
you know?
too late. So I highly recommend.
Paul is Rostam and George is. Yeah,
Don't even go there.
Yeah.
Don't even go.
No.
Okay, so we have Roshanak Manzarpour. She wrote, "It's cool to be Persian. Listening to this podcast makes me more proud to be Iranian. Thank you. P.S. I'm so happy you came back." That's nice.
Oh, that's Roshanak.
Roshanak.
Thank you.
Manzarpour.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
We have Abe Nema. He wrote on YouTube saying, "Another smashing interview by Jian. Very honest and hardworking men who dedicate their time and energy to Persian heritage. I admire them. Both creators of beautifully illustrated books. They are really courageous about their instinct and ideas. Otherwise, they would have knuckled under. I ordered all 3 available comic books by Bruce and the audiobook by Hamid. Thank you, Roqe.
That's great.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's lovely.
That's the kind of support we
You
want
see
people
that?
to
It's
give.
you're educating people about things that they wouldn't have otherwise known about.
If they buy the stuff too. That's good.
Yeah,
That's good to
for
know.
sure. As well, we have Sherry Garam Mikhosh. I'm
When you got here,
I'm doing my best here.
Gerami Khosh, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Gerami Khosh.
Gerami Khosh. Okay, there we go. So she wrote saying, "Good to have you back, Shion."
Oh,
Nice note, yeah. Amir Hossein.
Pronouncing her name took longer than reading the comment.
her name is beautiful, and I appreciate her sentiment.
It took a
I
while
won't
to
have
get
you
through
say
that.
bad things about Sherry Gerami Khosh.
See, it's not just me.
It's his lovely name.
Yes.
It is
It
lovely.
took a while to get through it.
It's our Farsi that's not so great. Well, mine at least.
Thank you. Yeah.
So Amir Hossein Amin Sharifi, he wrote, "Love your voice." I don't know who he's referring to. I think it might be you, but
Maybe it's Shia.
Maybe it's
Maybe.
Captain Reza.
all right. So we have the letter of the week, and it's by.
hang on.
Ooh.
Do we need a theme
Well,
music?
you have to
song, or,
announce
like-
it. Kyan. You have to be like you're just reading it like one of the other letters. You have
letter
to,
of the week. The letter of the week.
who has the letter
All
of the
right,
week?
so we have Rose Morsh. She's the letter of the week. She wrote on episode 15, the interview we did with Tehran. She wrote, "Dear Tehran, how amazing to hear your voice and platform. How beautifully quoted about the bridge in between. I can so very well see it. Thank you for your words about a system that is to be awakened. Salute to you, my friend. Humanity starts with one soul at a time. Thank you for another wonderful episode. Listening to everyone's soul, lightening everyone's soul in this hard time, and no one better than Tehran to voice this injustice." That's lovely.
Wow. So that's Rose. We should actually send that to Tehran because that's sort of addressed to him. So
Yeah.
Rose Morsh. Do we have a drum roll?
I found some drum feeling here, but if you let me, I can. Yeah, next time I will.
Okay. How about for
Next
next
time.
time?
Yeah.
Thank you,
Well, for
Shia.
now, we go without a
Our
drum.
speedy team.
Maybe
there.
a kola cap can be the prize for the letter of the week.
A rook kola cap?
Yeah, kola
Rook kola
cap. I think that's a good idea.
Now that we
right?
know what it's called,
Yeah.
we can now make them. Rose Morsh, thank you very much. You have the letter of the week. Thank you, Kyan. Thank you, Captain Reza. Thank you, Groovy Shia. Well, the first piano known to have arrived in Iran was a gift from Napoleon Bonaparte to Fath Ali Shah. The piano was a small 5-octave instrument and was probably hopelessly out of tune by the time it arrived in Tehran in 1805 in a cargo of gifts, which also included portrait paintings, furniture, and clocks. The piano was treated as a decorative object and was largely forgotten and placed at the corner of a hall in the Golestan Palace. Around 1866, Princess Esmeralda Dole decided to learn the instrument, as it was inappropriate for an aristocratic woman to be directly taught music by a man. She sent her bondwoman to learn it, and each session the bondwoman transferred to her what she had learned that day. So the first two pupils who learned to play the piano in Iran were women, as is my next guest. Take a listen to this. Little taste of Nocturne, A Night in a Persian Garden, composed by Behzad Rajbaran, performed by Layla Ramezan on her beautiful 2017 album, Layla Ramezan Plays 100 Years of Iranian Piano Music, Volume 1. Layla Ramezan is a pianist based in Lausanne, Switzerland, who has appeared in recitals and concerts at various venues around the world, including Collège des Bernardines in Paris, Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, Victoria Hall in Geneva, the Royal Irish Academy in Dublin, the Aga Khan Museum in Toronto, and Rudaki Hall in Tehran. Layla started playing the piano in Tehran at the age of 7 and continued her education by attending the École Normale de Musique de Paris, then the Haute École de Musique in Lausanne. She is a laureate of the Engelbert's Foundation for Art and Culture in Switzerland and the Albert Roussel Foundation in France. The first of 4 volumes of her recording project, 100 Years of Iranian Piano Music, was released in 2017. The second volume, Sherazade, by Alireza Mashayekhi, was released in 2019. And right now, Layla Ramezan joins me from Lausanne, Switzerland. Hello, Layla.
Hello, Jian.
What a pleasure to have you on this program. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for your invitation. I'm very, very excited to take part of your great broadcast.
Thank you. That's, you're sitting there in Lausanne. From what I remember, it's a gorgeous place. It's on Lake Geneva. This is a weird time for people. I guess some people would think if you're going to be isolated somewhere, that's the best place to be isolated. How would you characterize this strange time for you in Lausanne during a global pandemic?
Actually, yes, it's a strange time, actually, I should tell you. In Switzerland, we are more free than the other country like France. We were free to go out of home and to take breath. But actually, the government, it's the politic of Switzerland that give the people the responsibility to react as they want. And actually, the people are very respected to the laws, and nobody comes out, and the streets are really empty. It's a time of meditation, I can tell.
Well, I was going to say, how do you deal with isolation? Do you have an issue with it, or do you enjoy being just you and your piano taking some private time together?
Actually, I can tell you that it was a little violent for me, because I played the last concert in Berlin in the 11th of March, and actually I had several concerts in March and May and June, and I was just planning my work to practicing hard for the concert, the project, and I was like driving 200 kilometers in Germany, and I arrived and everything stopped, and it's my nature. I'm a positive person. I try to use the life as it comes to me. And it's a good time to thinking of life and see really what we are doing, what is really the place of piano in my life also. And yes, I practice my piano. I give some stream concerts, and I work on the future project. as I think a lot of my colleagues do, like me. And the only thing that I can tell that it's a little worrying for me and all the other musicians and artists of the who perform is we don't know when we can begin again to play and perform. It's just the things that I'm worried about.
It's so weird or strange how quickly things change, how quickly even our impressions of our own world change. Because you played that concert, you said in Berlin, it was March 11th, so it's really only 2-3 months ago. It's not that long ago. And yet already it's almost inconceivable. I don't even know if I remember going to concerts anymore. It just seems like a whole other world because we haven't been able to do that for a while. And that has got to be daunting for a performer. And we've talked to a few musicians, as you know, on this show who worry about that. I do understand that you also teach. So, and I know some of the conservatories in Lausanne have opened up. Are you teaching again?
Yes, I teach now. I teach more because I have more time. And actually, it's interesting because there was a lot of people that I knew that wanted to take lessons, and I told, "Oh, I'm sorry, I have concert. I don't have time." But now I have time, and I can give lessons, and it's interesting for me. I think I teach. I continue.
Even Pavarotti would be giving lessons right now. Everybody has to work. There's no gigs.
We need money.
Right. I want to ask you about your most recent recording projects. But while you're well known in many classical music communities, we may be introducing you to some folks here today who are listening who may not know Layla Ramezan as well. So take me back. Growing up in Iran, you were born in Tehran. You had to be surrounded by the sounds of traditional Persian instruments, santur, tar. How is it that you were drawn to the piano?
I was 6. I listened the first time the sound of a piano in my life, real sound, because my mother listened to the music, my father also, but the real piano that I see a piano in my life, I was 6. And it was in a party, and a friend of my parents played. And all the night I was near the piano, touch it and listen to it. And I asked it was the sound of the piano who fascinated me. And when you are a child, I don't know, I was not very attracted by the Persian instruments. The other instruments, I was not. And actually, around me, nobody played it, and I was not in an environment to hear this kind of music. I just listened to the piano and I just loved the sound and I wanted to play it.
Layla, you said in an interview about your childhood, at the time there was no music school or conservatory. I had to take private lessons in secret. I was taking lessons from one of the most important figures of music in Iran, but he was a musicologist, a composer, not really a pianist. From the start, he encouraged me to play the work of contemporary composers. So there's a lot to unpack in that statement alone, but I'm not sure I've heard of too many classical piano players who are self-taught, yet it sounds like pretty much that's what your journey was. You were learning from someone who was not really a pianist. Tell me about that.
Yes, that's why I wanted to tell you also, in this time that I began to study music, the music was forbidden. Actually, that's why maybe that I didn't hear neither the traditional music. Nowhere we listened to the music. It was forbidden. And there was no concert. It was not like today that everything is more open in Iran. And I had the chance actually that one of our friends knew Mr. Purtorab, Mustafa Kamal Purtorab, and actually in this time he gave the lessons, the piano lessons, and he was very interesting person and artist, very special character. He's very passionate in music, and it was not really the person who tell me really what should I do with piano. I was on something like, in French we tell autodidact. I learned piano by myself.
That's
I can tell
this is fascinating because I, as somebody who comes from playing rock and pop music and all my life, there's kind of a tradition where you can self-teach yourself, and it's even valued. A rock musician. I mean, someone like Paul McCartney for years said he couldn't read music, and he just learned how to play and learned how to play chords and wrote songs that way. Classical music has always seemed so much more serious and staid, and you better do it by the book, and you got to do it this way. It's actually refreshing to hear somebody self-teaching themselves. But where do you even begin with that? You're a kid. First of all, did you have a piano?
Yes, actually, it was difficult to have a piano because in this time there was nothing in Iran. Everybody, yes, there was no piano, and just we can have the piano from the people who wanted to leave the country and sell their goods, And one of the students of Mustafa Purtorov wanted to leave the country, and my parents bought his piano. And all the books that he had, because there was no score. It was very interesting. Actually, I was thinking about it. Its life is full of magical things. I think the only thing that has brought me to being a pianist, it was from the beginning. I wanted just to play and be a pianist. I don't know how, but I was just fascinated with this instrument. And actually, Mustafa Purtorov was very cultural person. He had the fantastic recording of the biggest pianist in the world, and every week he gave me the recording. I recorded them, and he analyzed the piece for me. The piano it's not just playing. It's a lot of things. And actually, I had a lot of chance to have him as a professor, because I was not just a pianist just to practice. It was like I am learning an art and a way of life. Music for me became a way to life, and from the beginning I was in a good way, because I had something like him as a model of life. And yes.
Let me get to the way of life. That's interesting. But first of all, I should clarify. When you say there were no pianos and it was forbidden and all that, I mean, obviously there was a history of piano players and pianists in Iran. I mean, you're chronicling it in your recordings. So I guess what you mean to say is after the revolution, they had to go underground, or the lessons had to become private. I remember my aunt plays the piano and was a piano teacher, but I guess it had to become a much more private thing after the revolution. Yes.
Yes, it was very private. We didn't have the possibility to perform out of the home. And actually, what was very interesting that Mustafa Purtorov prepared each 2 months a private concert for his students. And it was, I think, the best moment of my life, because I knew that in 2 months I should perform something. And from the very young age, I played for the people, even very simple piece. I played, and I loved to perform for the people. And he organized these concerts, and these concerts actually, when you are a children who grown up after the revolution, during the war, after the war, the country really was very in a special atmosphere. And we didn't have really the entertainments. In the television, there was not very attractive things for the children. We didn't have anything. I just have my piano, and it brought me a new world. It helped me to have a dream. I have just these dreams from my childhood. I have it now with me. I can remember all the dreams that I had to become a pianist. It opens the world to another world that I have never seen before.
That's really beautiful. When you say a way of life and a dream, I mean, it seems you took piano very seriously from a young age. I mean, I understand you love gymnastics, for example, but you gave it up to preserve your hands for playing music. That's a lot of sacrifice. A lot of kids would have, even if they loved the piano, thought of, okay, music is my hobby. How did you know it was going to be so much more than that for you?
It's something that helped me to go far and to have the things that I didn't have before. I don't know. It was just something that helped me, that I can see that it's the thing that I want. If somebody asks you why you love this girl, I'm sorry, you can't describe it. You just love it, you know. It's the same for me. I can't describe why, how. It was just the feeling that I love to play. I love to hear. I love this feeling to touch the piano, to hear the sound. It was just the word to go to the lesson, to have Mr. Purtorab who tells everything. This beautiful recordings, the concert that we gave privately to play for the people. It was just the word has changed my environment, you know.
We're hearing some bells. Is that where you are?
Yes, it's just near me. It's a church.
Okay.
Yes, at 6 o'clock actually it's finished too.
I was wondering if that was you were animating your conversation with some little bells in your hands or something like. It's very nice.
It gives some atmosphere.
Yes. It makes sense that you have so much passion for the piano, because watching you play, we see that passion. I mean, you're Layla, you're very animated. You're almost theatrical when you play. There's a lot of energy being expended. Were you always that way on the piano, or is that, I mean, be Roqe about this, be honest, is that a form of stagecraft?
You mean that in life in general I'm like this?
Well, you could ask that. You could answer that too. But I mean, when you're playing and you're bringing so much energy and almost theater to the way you play the piano, sometimes, are you doing that for show, or is that the way you play when you're at home?
No, it comes like this. I don't do show, but actually sometimes I feel myself to see what I am doing, because sometimes you do a lot and it's better to focus your energy on your hearing and to really be very limited in the movement, and to do really something that it's necessary, not too much, Actually, no, it's just become naturally. It's natural.
I think it's your gymnastics training coming out while you play the piano, maybe.
Yeah. Yes, I think, and sometimes piano is very look like gymnastic, because when you do especially artistic gymnastic, that you should jump and do a very movement in the air, and you should do the movement before in your head and after you go for it. And in the piano, it's exactly the same, You should do the movement before and you go for it. It's a lot of time I think of gymnastics when I play, actually.
I don't want to get too far off the path here, but just on that note, I remember a classical music teacher telling me once, or maybe I just saw it at a lesson, or my sister or something, but that when you're playing classical, the proper way to play piano is you have to keep your back straight and your hands should be flat and they should never move and only your fingers move. And there were all these rules, these physical rules, all of which you seem to break while you're playing. Your body jumps from one side to the other. Your hands go up in the air. Are there those rules as a teacher, or can you just do whatever you want in the service of playing the music?
Actually, as you told, it must be in the service of the music. Sometimes some movement is too much. Even when I play, I told you I try to record myself and see my movement and try to remove the movement which are not really necessary. And I do it because of some nervous feeling, or because of some tics that we have. I'm correcting my jest to be efficiently. And yes,
I want to get into the traditions of the music that you play and your discovery or rediscovery of Iranian traditions of piano. But before we do that, you've got your piano there right now, right?
Yes, yeah. I have my piano.
So I was thinking, before we get into the more sophisticated music or some of the pieces that you've been working on more recently, we've just been talking about your childhood. We've been talking about you growing up in Iran. We've talking about that mentor that you had, that I'm sorry, I forgot his name.
Mustafa Kamal.
There you go. Yes. Can you play us something? I don't know when the last time you did this was, but play us something from your early days of playing the piano. What's something that you remember that you learned when you were first learning piano in Iran?
Yes, I know it. I know. Okay, I will play it for you.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Tell me about that.
It's Mozart actually. It's one of the opera of the Mozart. When I bought my piano, there were some books with it. As I told you, there was no score in the. We couldn't buy the score, but they have some score in with the piano, and in one of them there was some pieces from Mozart. And I think what is fascinated for me that when I played this piece, I just thinking of all the things that my professor told me about this opera and yes.
So you end up leaving Iran to do schooling in France and in Switzerland in music, and I can only assume working in the Western classical tradition of music. And your musical trajectory is fascinating to me because I can only assume it's extremely difficult to play Rachmaninoff and Chopin or Bach. You began your career in grand style, playing virtuoso pieces by these masters of Western music. Then you switch to Iranian composers. I guess as an Iranian, it's natural that Iranians may be wanting you to play artistically important Persian pieces. But what was the turning point? When did you leave the prestige of Western classical music behind and start to enjoy the work of composers who were looking for modernity but breaking the codes of traditional Iranian music?
When I began to study music, my professor was a composer, and actually from the young age I played his pieces. I loved also all the times to work with the composer which are alive. And I had 10 years old, I went to listen to the lessons of Mashayekhi that I have recorded in my second CD. Just, it was fascinating for me to listen to this music. And when I left Iran and began to study in Paris, École Normale, and after Conservatory, and also when I get masters in Switzerland, each time for each diploma and each year of exam, we had to prepare a piece from a French composer or a Swiss composer. In each country that I were, I had to play a composer from that country for my exam. And all the times I was thinking, why in Iran now there is the university, and why the students don't play the piece from Iranian composer? You know, I just was thinking about it.
Right.
And I came back to Iran. I asked for searching for the Iranian composer and to see what has happened during these 10 years that I wasn't in Iran, and I was in Iran, but I didn't perform in Iran, you know. I was not playing there, and yes.
So how difficult a transition is it artistically if you become trained in the Western tradition to then go and learn the works or play the works of Hanon or Rohani or Kayhani? You then have to acquire the rhythm, the feeling, the sense for the Persian music. It's I wonder what that's like. It's like you knew how to fly and then you had to learn how to walk, or vice versa. Are there really two different worlds, or do they come from the same creative place for you?
Actually, it's difficult for me to tell you because I'm Iranian. And I do a lot of things instinctively, in French we tell it qarizi.
Instinctively, yes.
Qarizi. Yes. I don't know. I know that because my husband is French and a composer, and several times I listen a rhythm in 6/8. Da, 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 and he listen it da, 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 da. You know, it's a feeling that we have a different kind of feeling about the rhythm. And I think it was much more easy for me to perform Iranian these pieces because I have this feeling of rhythm that the composers also have.
Okay, so we didn't plan this, and you will be forgiven if you don't want to do this, but if you will indulge me, I'm wondering if you can give us a very quick tutorial on the difference in the Western tradition of piano and the Iranian tradition. If you go to your piano and maybe play us something that would be one of the tenets of Western tradition, and then something that would be more from the Iranian tradition. Is that possible?
Actually, for example, you do just a motif like this. It's a motif, okay?
Okay.
Somebody can hear in 2 times, and somebody, we have a lot the Turner music like this, but the Western,
Right.
It's different kind of feeling.
Is it always about the rhythm though? Because what about the actual the melodies or the do you naturally go to different places melodically in Iranian piano? What they would call, say, modal.
Actually, it's also about the notation. Notation, it means how you feel the music. For example, when I play Sherazad by Mashayekhi, it's a music very actually our music, Iranian music, is based on improvisation, and you can feel it. But the music I play, everything has been written, but you should have this feeling of improvisation.
Do you mean that is the Persian music less structured then overall?
Actually, the composer I played, they tried to give the structure to their music because they want to get rid of this improvisation. They want to have the writing music based on the Western rules of the music, which is very also rich. And but in bottom of this, it's very based on improvisation. Yes, of course.
So can you play us one of the pieces, or sorry, a little piece of one of the pieces that say you recorded on the 100 years of Iranian piano music that would speak to that kind of improvisational kind of style?
Yes, of course. I can play one of these pieces that has been completely written, but it's it's a piece of Ahmad Pejman, Persava.
Oh,
actually,
so you're picking this because this is my favorite.
Yes, actually, it's also very precious to me because when I wanted to perform this 100 this project, and one of my friends, Farshad Jamali, a very good singer, told me, Layla, Ahmad Pejman is writing for piano. And I told him that I don't know Ahmad Pejman, I know him, but I have never talked to him. He told me, yes, I give his number. And I called him. He told me, yes, I'm writing, but I'm very afraid because it's the first time that I'm writing for piano. And I don't know at all it's good for piano or not. And it was very nice for me because we have built up this piece together. He sent it to me and told me, is this okay? Yes, everything is okay. And I encouraged him to write it. And actually, I premiered it in Iran when he was there also. And yes, it's very precious to me, this piece. And I just play a small part.
Please,
of it.
I'm thrilled that you're playing this.
Yeah.
Yes. beautiful. That's so beautiful. What was it like to play that in front of him in Iran?
Oh, it was just. I have a video. I think you saw this video. He is inside.
Yeah,
This
it's on.
video he came
That's
after.
right. Yeah, it's
I,
on YouTube.
it,
Yeah, it's
it,
true. That performance in
yes,
Iran in 2014, I think, or something.
yes, it was
Yes.
amazing because I played 21 composers in 2 nights, and every composer were there. They were alive. Just Malik Aslanian was passed away the year before. Never they have been together in the same time in Rudaiki Hall, all of these. And it was funny because some of them hate the other one, but they
Really,
came to
even
the
even amongst
concert.
the piano players, there's competition.
It was very funny because, for example, I invited them. Ah, no, I don't want to see na 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 na. Ah, yes, you will come just for me. And they
ببین
came.
دیگه
It was
ایرانیا
very
هر جایی که بریم apparently we have this problem even to go to a concert. Um,
yes. It actually it's also here like this, but it's more hidden. You know, it's not very obvious, but no, it was very clear. But it was funny. So yes, it was great thing because after that also there was a lot of pianists who began to play the Iranian music of these composers, and yes, a lot of festivals who have begun to build up the contemporary Iranian music with the young composers. I'm very happy about it, really.
You know, Layla, it occurs to me, I mean, you lived in France for 6 years. You've been living in Lausanne for 12 years now. But you do regularly go back to Iran. You've performed there. You're so interested in exploring Iranian music. You're interested in representing and exporting it. Your family lives in Iran. Why do you choose to just not return there permanently?
Oh, to live there. Mm, actually, uh, it's a good question because you ask yourself now, where is your home really? But now I can tell that half of my life I lived in Iran, and half of my life I lived in Europe.
Yes.
It's my maybe it's me who is now half here, half there, and my life now is here. And I don't know if I can live again in Iran. You know, it's difficult also to really do the professional thing in Iran. You should know it's difficult to build up the things because everything changes permanently. When you have a concert in Iran, you know, it's very exhausting. Every time when I play in Iran, it's very difficult because we get the mujawez, this permission, very late, and I should prepare the concert, and I'm not sure that finally they will give the mujawez or not.
Right.
You know, you just, it's very exhausting, but it's me also there. I can tell that I'm not I belong also to Iran, and I want to bring this music to Iranian people, for the young composer to know that this music also is our music, and they can have a reference for their composition, that these composers also has written these pieces for the piano, you
This is
know.
what I was going to ask you about. I mean, to actually tell me why you started the 100 Years of Iranian Piano Music Project and Sheher Azad. Because you've said that you want to seek to create links between Persian heritage and European contemporary music. It sounds like you found the right partners for it in Ali Reza Mashayekhi and Kayvan Shemirani, among many others you've worked with. Can you reflect on why you believe and what you believe the importance of this music is? Why the world needs to hear this music?
When I play Sherazad, sometimes in the meanwhile that I think I'm walking in the Persepolis in Shiraz, I'm walking also in the pollution streets of Tehran. You know, it's a combination of modernity, of Iran of today, and Iran of 2,000 years before. It's maybe me, it's us, it's Iran, you know. And that's why I want to perform this music, because it's everything inside. You have Our music is based on literature, and you can feel the literature in this music. And it's based on our traditional music, which is fantastic, but you can see the Western code of music. The accord was very complicated. You can hear the serial music, you can hear the jazz music, you can hear the classical music, contemporary. You can hear everything inside. You know.
Layla, in 100 years of Iranian piano music, this project, these 4 records, you present the works of many Iranian composers, including a woman named Fawzia Majd. Tell me about her. Why was she important to you?
She's very important to me because, she is now 82 years old. And she was one of the composers who didn't leave Iran after the revolution. She was the artistic director of the festival of 2,500 years of when they did this festival in Persepolis, before revolution. جشن‌های 2500 ساله. She was the artistic director of and she invited a lot of big pianists, great pianists like Rubinstein, Brendel, who came and performed in Persepolis in Iran. And after revolution, she stayed. She gave the piano lessons, and she continued to write just for herself. Nobody could play her pieces because we couldn't play the pieces of a woman composer.
Wow.
And actually I knew it recently. When I see her and talk to her, I saw how powerful she is. She stayed on her language. She has done what Bartok has done for Hungary. She has recollected all folkloric music of Iran and based a very contemporary music based on this folk music of Iran. It's a lot of elements of folk music in her music, but you can't hear it like this. You should analyze the piece to hear it. And for me, it's very precious that this lady has studied in France. She knows to write in Western rules of music, and she puts her heritage of music inside and bring to life a very complicated and beautiful piece I recorded in my first CD, And I think for our new generation of composer, it's important to know, okay, of course we have a big composer in the world that everybody knows, but we have also our composers that use it and did it, and it's interesting to know what they have done, and we have something. Piano is not very old in our country. We have just 100 years that the people play and the composer try to write for it. But I think for 100 years, it has gone very far.
Your story about Fawzia Majd is beautiful, and what she means to you. I think maybe we can play a piece of her music at the end of this interview. Yeah. Would you pick a piece from Fawzia Majd that we can play at the end of the interview?
There is three dialogue. There is 3 dialogue. Maybe the third one is better because it goes faster.
That's such a great story about her. Listen, Layla, before I let you go, how do you define success for you now? You've accomplished a lot. You've got these recordings that you're making. You're cataloging Iranian piano music for the world. You're playing these big concerts. You're in this beautiful place in Switzerland. What is success to you now? Do you care about being a best-selling pianist at the box office? Do you want to be the number 1 pianist in the world? Classical music, as we learn over and over again, is not the path to pick if you want to be guaranteed a future of big money. So what is this all about for you now?
Actually, I think what is I can tell success. I think it's some kind of peace, interior peace. And that I feel now. I have really an interior peace, maybe because from the beginning, I follow what I heard in my heart. It was not easy to continue the music as my parents didn't want. They was not happy with it, but I continued. It was not easy. And when I am looking before what has happened, I think if I had a child and he wanted or she wanted to continue the music, I don't tell him or her that it's difficult for economic that you become a pianist because nobody knows what happens. I just
Right.
tell, okay, if you want, you should do it. I think the success can be just this that you do, and in all the situations when I choose something, it was the things that my heart told me that I should do it, and it's natural for me. This project of Iranian music, it's just my life. It's me, it's my life, and I think this can be maybe success for me.
Well, of all the things you've accomplished, Inner Peace sounds like a pretty good one too. That's I congratulate you on that. Listen, it has been such a pleasure to get to talk to you. I hope I didn't poke too much at trying to figure out the ins and outs of Persian versus Western, and but you were so great to help us with that and to tell us your story and tell us about your recordings. And I say this, I find I'm saying this more and more at the end of interviews, but I can't wait for COVID to be over with. So hopefully we can see you in concert again before too long.
Thank you, Jian. I'm so happy to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for your invitation. And I hope to see you also very soon
Yes.
in person.
Take care of yourself.
Thank you very much.
Khudafis.
Have a nice evening. Khodafez. Bye-bye.
That's the great pianist Layla Ramezan. The latest volume of her recording project, 100 Years of Iranian Piano Music, is called Sherazad by Alireza Mashayekhi. It was released in 2019. Layla Ramezan joined us from Lausanne, Switzerland today. I want to go out on this Fawzia Majd piece. We were just talking about Fawzia Majd. This is from Layla's actually 2017 record, Volume 1 of the 100 Years of Iranian Piano Music. A piece called Dialogue 88, number 2, Fawzia Majd. Thank you so much for listening to Roqe today. Thanks to the team who put this together. Thanks to all of you who are supporting and spreading the word and subscribing. Much appreciated. Talk to you next week. Mizun Bashin.